On January 7th, 2026, Renee Good, a 37-year-old woman, was shot 3 times and killed in Minneapolis by Immigration and Customs Enforcement agent Jonathan Ross after she clipped him with her car. Renee wasn't an illegal immigrant, which is who ICE usually targets. This event sparked huge protests across Minnesota and the United States as a whole, and kicked off weeks of discourse over ICE's expanded mandate under President Trump. I'm going to show you, as neutrally as I can, the opinions of people on both sides of this issue. For lack of better terms, we'll call them the pro-Renee Good or the pro-driver position, and the pro-Jonathan Ross or the pro-officer position. I've seen people use pro and anti-ICE, but that implies agreeing with ICE's wider deployment outside of the shooting, or their organizational goals of apprehending and deporting illegal immigrants. And I want to focus specifically on the shooting for this conversation. The pro-driver position is basically that Agent Ross provoked the encounter. Ross and other ICE agents surrounded Good's car, panicking her and causing her to drive forward. She didn't intend to hit Ross, but he deliberately positioned himself in front of her car to try and make her stop. She attempted to swerve around him, and he massively overreacted by shooting her in the head 3 times as she drove by. In short, because the shooting was unjustified and clearly officer overreach, it's murder. To contrast, the pro-officer position is that Renee Good provoked the encounter. Cars are not only vehicles, they're weapons, and officers should treat them as such. If a person drives their car towards you, that is no different than them firing a gun at you, or swinging a bat, or stabbing you with a knife. They are trying to kill you, and therefore self-defense is justified. Additionally, as anyone who understands how encounters with the police play out, you argue your case in court, not on the side of the road. If a cop tells you to get out of your car, you do so, and if they violate your rights, you win in court. You don't fight the officers. In short, because the shooting was justified in the face of Renee Good's aggression, it's officer self-defense. Now, just so we understand each other, I am not going to be giving you a legal analysis here. I don't know this part of the law nearly well enough for that. And there are many good law channels on YouTube, of all political persuasions. They can tell you the score on that front. But I will give you a moral analysis, because even though this will piss everyone off, once again, both sides have a point. However, just so we know what we're talking about, let's watch the available clips of the actual event. Yes, this will be at least somewhat violent. We are talking about a woman who got shot 3 times in the head after all. And yes, that means this video is demonetized. So toss a coin my way if you can afford it, will ya? The initial video of the event that went viral begins with Renee Good either trying to pull out or blocking the road, depending on who you ask. 2 ICE agents hop out of the unmarked car that's being impeded, and one tries to open her driver's side front door. While it's not visible initially from this angle, there is a 3rd ICE agent who's been circling her vehicle on foot. He comes into view around the front of the car as Renee Good tries to drive off. This 3rd agent is Agent Ross, and he shoots her 3 times as she drives by. Good's vehicle continues in a straight line before crashing into a lamppost a few houses down. A viewer of my channel, as well as some of my friends' channels, Zero Fucks, provided a slow motion audio breakdown of the 3 shots. It's hard to see what's actually happening with Ross. The other agent is almost entirely blocking the view. He may have been hit by Renee's car. He might have just been clipped. He also may have pushed off of her car with his arms, though that possibility looks less likely. It does appear to be more likely that he was knocked back somewhat. Another angle from further down the street appears to show Ross getting hit and pushed aside by the front corner of the car. In this video, he doesn't actually appear to be in any danger of being run over completely, adding weight to the idea that Good was trying to swerve around him. Once again, he could be getting clipped here, but he also could be pushing off of the car with his arms. A 3rd angle from a neighbor's surveillance camera shows much the same thing. Her car was surrounded by multiple people. She was trying to swerve around them, and she clipped Ross. At this point, it's pretty undeniable. She definitely hit him with her car, at least a little bit, and she should not have tried to leave the situation. The pro-officer camp is correct when they say the place to argue these things is court, not the streets. But does this mean that Agent Ross was simply completely morally justified in doing what he did? That his actions are completely excused by hers? That he did nothing wrong at all? Well, another video eventually came out, this time from the phone that Agent Ross himself was holding. Yeah, it was a phone recording, not a body camera for some reason. But it took 2 more days for that angle of the event to drop, and during that time, battle lines were drawn. The pro-officer camp had decided that Good had her tires pointed directly at Ross and fully intended to run him over, and she only began turning away when he pulled his gun. It's kind of crazy how these people decry the armchair analysis of an officer's actions who has to react in the moment and doesn't have the benefit of slow-mo footage, when this guy is literally doing the exact same type of thing to the other party in this event. And in the same vein, the pro-driver camp became fully convinced that she was just trying to get away. Ross clearly had time to hop out of the way of the car. She even tried to swerve around him. The Good didn't intend to nick Ross with her car, but it's the same problem. Everybody is asking both of these parties, who are panicking and reacting on instinct, to just do the best thing that they think they should have done. But split-second decision-making doesn't work like that. There's no shaggy ultra instinct mode kicking in here. So let's watch Ross's cell phone footage of the event, so we can get his point of view. And yes, he had his gun in one hand and the cell phone in the other. Yeah, so that's Renee Good, saying, "This is fine, I'm not mad at you." She doesn't look like she thinks she's in trouble, though she does look a bit cheeky. Her facial expression and her tone of voice makes me think that she knows she's doing something mischievous, which is some evidence for the whole "she's here to obstruct" narrative.
Show your face! I'm not mad at you. That's okay, we don't change our plates every morning, just so you know. It'll be the same plate when you come talk to us later. That's fine. U.S. citizen, former fucking driver. You want to come at us?
The other woman talking outside of the car is Renee Good's girlfriend or wife, I'm not sure which. She says that the license plates aren't going to be changed. This is a reference to a 2025 controversy where ICE agents were discovered illegally swapping their license plates in Illinois without legal authorization to do so in an attempt to not be tracked by protesters. She's basically making fun of them.
You want to come at us? I say go get yourself some lunch, big boy. Go ahead.
Out of the car. Get out of the fucking car. Get out of the car.
When the other agent, not Ross, approaches from the side and tells Good to get out of the car, Good's girlfriend tries to hop in with her, and Good still looks like she's not taking this all that seriously.
Get out of the car. Whoa!
And yeah, Good's girlfriend says, "Drive, baby, drive," and Good unfortunately listens to her, clipping Ross in the process. Ross is pretty clearly surprised and knocked back, and in retaliation shoots 3 bullets into Good's head as she drives by. The fucking bitch epithet is just sprinkles on top.
Fucking bitch.
Index Investigation, a channel that takes multiple angles of an event and recreates it using AI, put out their analysis of the shooting. All available evidence shows that the first shot was taken around the time Ross was hit by Good or shortly thereafter. The second and third shots were taken as she drove by, after he had already been knocked out of the way. This is consistent with bullet impacts at the scene. The first went through her windshield, and the second and third went through her driver's side window. Once again, I can't make a legal judgment here, though if I had to guess, I'd think that all 3 shots will be judged as a package deal. But morally, it's very obvious that the second and third shots were entirely unnecessary and inappropriate. He was out of the way of the car at that point. Shooting her with those 2 shots is simply retaliation, not self-defense. The first shot, though, is where the discussion is. Even though this isn't a legal analysis, the Department of Homeland Security's guidelines on officer conduct can probably help us shed some light on the situation. For example, agents are not allowed to fire their guns solely to disable a moving vehicle. They're also generally not allowed to shoot at the operator of a vehicle, with some narrow exceptions, and doing so requires the officer to take into account innocent bystanders and the possibility of an out-of-control car. They're also not allowed to shoot solely to prevent a suspect from escaping. They are allowed to shoot only if there's a reasonable belief that the driver is about to cause imminent death to the officer or another person, or if their escape would cause imminent death, like they're driving away intended to kill somebody else or something, and that shooting them would prevent that occurrence. If it turns out that Agent Ross actually violated this code of conduct up to a legal standard, then obviously he should be punished appropriately, although I don't trust the Trump administration to be impartial in this matter based off their past behavior. However, on a moral level, I don't think that any of Ross's shots actually live up to the standard outlined in the DHS's document. The final 2 are so obviously retaliatory, they're not even worth considering. He was shooting at her head through the driver's side window as she was driving by him. He was not at all under threat. But let's look at the first shot. He was in front of the car when she accelerated forward. From his point of view, he was clearly startled by this, even if she was trying to move around him. When he got clipped by her, he fired the first shot through her windshield at around the same time. Is it reasonable to believe that this shot would have stopped the car and prevented him from getting clipped? Obviously not. In fact, the opposite happened. Good accelerated into the lamppost, probably without even knowing she did it. Whether you believe he was hit first and knocked away, meaning there was no further damage to prevent as she drove by, or he was hit second, meaning he was split second trying to stop her from hitting him, this action would not have actually stopped the vehicle, making the shooting unacceptable. And yes, I know that armchair analysis is not the same thing as being there in the moment, but it's important to understand that he improperly put himself in that position in the first place, such that he had to make a split-second decision. According to ICE's own code of conduct, Ross actually violated it by walking in front of her car for no reason. And no, trying to prevent her from leaving by putting his body in the path of the car does not qualify under the policy. though she shouldn't have tried to leave, he placed himself in a position where if she did try to leave, his presence would automatically be justification for escalation. Now, I saw people in the pro-officer camp post this video as an example showing why a vehicle should be treated as a deadly weapon.
As the Jeep continued to advance, Officer Caprio got off one shot. WJZ won't show the rest, but a somber jury saw and heard Amy Caprio dying from massive crushing injuries.
And you know what? Fair enough. But here's the problem. In that video, the officer also shot at the driver, and the vehicle did not stop, and the officer was killed. Because unlike Renee Good in this case, the driver actually intended to use the vehicle as a weapon. This video proves the very real need for officers to treat vehicles as the weapons they are. But it also shows that officers should not be standing in front of vehicles, and should not be counting on firing their weapons at the driver as a method to actually stop the vehicle from accelerating. In other words, even if you're a cop, get the fuck out of the way, because even if you manage to shoot and kill the driver, you're still gonna get fucking hit, which is why all of these various department policies say, get the fuck out of the way. Now just so we're clear, this doesn't mean that I'm simping for Renee Good somehow. She was a fucking retard. When she was told to get out of the car, she should have gotten out of the car. She was an American citizen. ICE can't deport her anywhere. And she absolutely should not have accelerated into or even around Ross, triggering that response from him. There is plenty of blame to go around here. Ideally, she would have followed all orders and had her day in court. The next ideal situation is that should she have fled, the ICE agent should have followed all applicable policy and law and simply put out a warrant for her arrest. I would have had no problem if she simply drove away like a moron and then got picked up by the cops later and charged with whatever. She should not have tried to flee, but also, he had no reason to shoot her. Both of these actions were unnecessary, and any reasonable person can criticize them both. By the way, people actually initially thought this new footage was faked. Earlier in the story, AI-generated top-down images of the event were published and passed around as true, though it later came out they were false. So when people started noticing the fucking giant T-Rex and shark in the front lawns of houses in the background, everyone began screaming AI. But no, if you go to that street on Google Maps, yeah, for some reason these people actually just had a T-Rex and a shark in their front lawns. Minneapolis is a weird place. So, that's the overview of the event. I think anybody who's reasonable understands there's plenty of blame to go around here, and that one party being at fault does not mean the other is blameless. There were also a whole bunch of micro discourses surrounding the whole thing, so let's go over those real quick too. Firstly, the jokes and memes. You know me, I love me an edgy, irreverent joke. So even if you might find some of this stuff tasteless, hell, even I find some of it over the line, I still obviously don't think any of it should be censored or banned. Free speech is free speech, even if it's offensive. However, the woman used in some of these memes is very clearly not Renee Good, and yet people keep saying this is her. What happened was, Renee Good was in a post on a Facebook page for winners of a college poetry contest, and this unrelated woman was also in that post. People began using her face and claiming this is Renee Good, when it's not. Some people even did the whole LOL, they used a more flattering pic of her in the media thing. No, dude, it was just a mistake. Whoever this is pretty cute though. However, there are a lot of bad faith shitters too, like those people who made jokes about Renee Good's death, who were also screaming bloody murder when jokes were made about Charlie Kirk's death, or Ashley Babbitt, or Corey Comparator, or whoever. These people's adherence to their free speech principles, their ability to take a joke and not be a triggered fucking snowflake, only flows in one direction. They'll laugh at trans people dying, they'll make 41% jokes, they'll laugh at Paul Pelosi getting hammer timed, whatever. But when it comes time to laugh at Charlie Kirk getting Charlie murked, they cry like fucking children. They dox people, they get them fired, etc. Never let the rightoids get away with claiming they're not snowflakes. They abso-fucking-lutely are. The most disgusting part, though, are the people who aren't joking. The ones who view this as justified state-sanctioned revenge against their political opponents. It is pretty easy to deny these people exist. After all, they have built up this narrative that only the left wishes violence on its enemies. But that is just not true.
The storm is here! When we come, one, we go all! No one can stop what is coming! Get here, guys. We need you in Minnesota. These people are fucking terrorists.
Patriots, get out here. We need the backup. And all you liberal commie motherfuckers, keep your hands to yourself or you're gonna get hurt today, alright? We executed one of you yesterday. We executed one of you yesterday. You understand that? We executed one of you yesterday.
Don't get hit. Don't give them the press. You're just talking to white supremacists.
You guys keep playing stupid games. You're gonna keep getting stupid prizes.
Do not give them attention.
You guys keep playing stupid games. You're gonna keep getting stupid prizes.
And of course, because every event on the internet is a culture war now, a lot of people began arguing over the minutiae of the event, in a desperate attempt to claim that their view was the correct one, and their opponents are just ontologically evil, when what they hold up as their example is the dumbest, most insignificant parts of the entire story. Like for example, this idiot who screamed, "Totally justified shooting." How come? Because she's got these whack job stickers in the back of her car, clearly showing off her whack job affiliations. One, those stickers are for various national parks, and one of them's a soccer club. But two, this isn't a reason to fucking shoot someone. Or the fact that Trump himself claimed on Truth Social that Agent Ross was hospitalized, as did Kristi Noem during a press conference.
The officer went to the hospital. He was hit by the vehicle, went to the hospital and received treatment, was released, and is spending time with his family now.
However, all footage of the event shows that Ross remained at the scene for some time after the impact. The stupidest take on this part of the story was from the Hodge twins. Yeah, you know those guys that did comedy shit on YouTube a decade ago? They're right-wing commentators now. Anyway, they literally gave the opposite take, depending on which social media platform they were on. Maybe each twin is controlling a different account, and they're drifting apart politically or something. What's really funny about that Trump Truth Social post is that he actually made it before he'd even seen the fucking video of the shooting. Yeah, in the message he says he just watched it, and that was on January 7th. But the next day, January 8th, the New York Times actually sat down with Trump and questioned him about the post. In response, a Trump aide pulled up the video on a laptop so everyone present could watch it. And when confronted with the actual video, Trump said, "Well, the way I look at it, it's a terrible scene. I think it's horrible to watch. No, I hate to see it." The fact that he was stunned after actually seeing the event suggests to me this is the first time he'd actually seen the footage. And if that's the case, what the fuck are you doing making these solid statements in public? This is like with the Tylenol vaccine shit from a few months ago, where Trump was just saying random nonsense, and then wondered aloud if what he was saying was even true.
And by the way, I think I can say that there are certain groups of people that don't take vaccines and don't take any pills that have no autism. That have no autism. Does that tell you something? That's currently, is that a correct statement, by the way?
A few days later, after Trump got his story straight, he said to the press during an Air Force One flight that Renee was disrespectful towards law enforcement, apparently using that as a justification for the event.
This came out, we have the best crime stats on record, despite all the criminals he allowed into our country. We've gotten a lot of them out. We have to respect our law enforcement. At a very minimum, that woman was very, very disrespectful to law enforcement. And you heard the same noises, you saw the same crunch that I saw. You can't do that with law enforcement, whether it's police or ICE or Border Patrol or anybody else.
When you're on Minneapolis, your administration has advocated for absolute immunity for the ICE officer who shot Renee Good. How do you define absolute immunity? What does that mean?
Everyone's seen it, and a woman who's very violent. She's a very radical person. Very sad what happened. Her friend was very radical. Go or drive.
Absolute immunity. How would you define that?
Well, I'm going to let the people define it. But immunity, you know what immunity notices.
It eventually came out that Agent Ross was involved in an altercation back in June of 2025, where he was pursuing an illegal immigrant who was also a child sex offender. During that event, the criminal actually dragged Ross by his car for over 300 feet. Some people began to say that for Ross, this wasn't some armchair analysis event. He had 1 second to make a judgment call, and his previous experience informed his negative reaction.
The vice president defended Officer Ross on Thursday. I want to play a little bit of what he said for you. Take a look at what he said.
What that headline leaves out is the fact that that very ICE officer nearly had his life ended, dragged by a car 6 months ago, 33 stitches in his leg. So you think maybe he's a little bit sensitive about somebody ramming him with an automobile?
Do you think that experience from 6 months ago, which the vice president detailed, may have impacted Officer Ross's judgment? Is that the argument?
It may have. I mean, he was under attack once with a vehicle, so certainly.
And you know what? Fair enough. I can understand being affected by something like that. But if it turns out that his ability to make the right choice has been damaged due to some kind of PTSD from a previous encounter, then he should not hold that job. It also came out that Renee Good was what is known as a legal observer. Libs of TikTok thought the use of that term was some kind of coordinated Democrat astroturfing push, because HYUK is a drooling retard. A legal observer is a member of a human rights agency who specifically attends protests or riots in order to record conflicts between the public and the police. Yes, this is a real thing. Oftentimes it's volunteer, sometimes it's paid. But the fact that organizations like these exist has begun to feed the right-wing narrative about how all of these protests against their policies are somehow paid. The implication being that there's no actual real objections to how the Republicans are behaving. It's all just actors getting a paycheck to show up and protest for the camera in order to manufacture consent. However, at the same time, other right-wingers also discovered that the legal observer group Renee Good was a part of, Ice Watch Minnesota, had published a guidebook on their Instagram account on how to legally impede the actions of ICE. You know, stuff like letting victims shelter inside your house or your car, or wasting ICE officers' time with insignificant questions, or blocking the road by taking your time pulling out of a parking spot. Considering that Good was a part of this organization, and she was in fact blocking an ICE vehicle, plus the fact that her shit-eating grin during the video kinda shows us she knows she's up to something. Yeah, it's not a stretch to say that this was a tactic to legally impede ICE.
The deadly incident that took place in Minnesota yesterday occurred as a result of a larger, sinister, left-wing movement that has spread across our country, where our brave men and women of federal law enforcement are under organized attack. As a result, Democrats are impeding immigration enforcement operations daily, creating extremely heightened and dangerous circumstances that make it nearly impossible for the men and women of law enforcement to simply do their jobs.
However, once again, this doesn't justify shooting her. Listening to an officer's commands but complying slowly, even if just to piss them off, might make you an asshole, but it doesn't mean the officer is now justified in shooting you. Even disobeying an officer directly means that you've earned yourself an arrest, not an execution. Obviously, the shooting was triggered by Good's acceleration, whether justified or not. But there are people online right now saying that Good being a member of this group means that it was post hoc morally justified to just fucking shoot her, which is ridiculous. As a result of all of this, Trump's DOJ wants to open investigations into Renee Good, her partner, and ICE Watch, an action which has led to the resignations of multiple federal-level prosecutors, as it is pretty clearly just a partisan witch hunt. Perhaps most ghoulishly of all are the people who bring up the fact that Renee Good was in a lesbian relationship, to somehow justify or downplay her death. Not as a joke, but as a real critique. Like, just listen to this.
The woman who lost her life was a self-proclaimed poet from Colorado, with pronouns in her bio. A 37-year-old white woman named Renee Good. The Daily Mail says she leaves behind a lesbian partner and a child from a previous marriage. She was a disruptor, though she considered herself a legal observer. But there's no evidence she had a law degree.
This is not Jesse Waters making an edgy joke. This is Jesse Waters implying that Good's death was morally permissible due to her lifestyle and her political views. And of course, he's too stupid to know what a legal observer is, because in reality, this guy is just a regime propagandist. As a result of all of this stuff and more that I haven't covered, ICE has rapidly become significantly less popular in Minnesota and across the United States as well. Polling shows that disapproval of Trump is at an all-time high, but the Renee Good shooting looks like a real tipping point. And on the ground, things aren't much better. Protests against ICE are growing, and not solely with those young, far-left Antifa radicals or something. Normal people are getting in on it too. Fights are breaking out against ICE, including this one Hodor-looking motherfucker, where it takes like a dozen agents to take him down. You've got people chanting, "Hang Kristi Noem," which, under normal circumstances, I would call an insane escalation. But at this point, I kind of fucking get it. You've got left-wingers showing up with their guns, and right-wingers are crying about it. And it's just like, hold the fucking phone, dude. How many times have the rightoids attended protests, strapped up, and yelling about their Second Amendment rights, and how the government needs to be afraid of the people and all that shit? And now they're hand-wringing about guns? Give me a fucking break, you losers. All that being said though, don't you worry, the leftoids are being cringe too. For example, there was that one progressive lady who said that wasting political energy on Renee Good should not be happening because she was white and privileged as compared to black or immigrant victims.
Like, I mean, part of it is being like a white woman when black and brown people have been experiencing this for a long time. This isn't new for them, and so I don't know if that makes any sense. No.
And in turn, right-wingers began making fun of Renee Good for martyring herself for a movement that just does not give a shit about her due to her race. And you know what? Fair enough, there was at least some of that. However, just so we're clear, that was not the majority opinion. All of these protesters and rioters we've seen today, they're out there due to Renee Good's death, and it is a pretty diverse crowd. In fact, she even got her own fucking Chaz for a little bit. Now listen, I did an hour-long video on Chaz back in the day. It was a fucking shit show. The fact that even local Democratic establishment politicians were inexplicably permissive of an anarchist group cordoning off 6 blocks of downtown Seattle and declaring themselves as having left the Republic for a month was absolutely ridiculous. It's not just the fact that there was widespread looting and property damage, or that multiple people died. It massively eroded trust in the legitimate authority of the state and its institutions, and Democrats should have never allowed it to happen. This shit cannot happen again. It has to fucking stop. And thankfully, this time, the autonomous zone didn't last for more than a few days. In fact, in general, the leftist rioters seem to be learning. The public was overwhelmingly against the Summer of Love 2020 because the rioters attacked everything indiscriminately, not just public buildings or police officers, whom they had their grievance with, but everyone and everything. Private businesses, civilians, mom and pop stores. When the 2020 rioters trashed the communities that people lived in, those people turned on them real fucking quick. But overwhelmingly, that's not happening this time. The majority of damage is being directed against ICE. ICE officers, ICE property, ICE vehicles, that sort of thing. Nobody's gonna shed any tears for an ICE car getting fucking raped on the side of the road, the same way that they did watching the local corner store getting Molotovs 6 years ago. All in all, it really does seem to be the case that Trump cannot simply control a country directly without the consent of the people whose communities he's sending ICE into, because the whole thing has become so unpopular that nobody is standing for it anymore. Even some right-wingers are beginning to say it's gone too far.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty right-leaning, but seeing this is not what you need to do. It's not how to do it. It's not how we're supposed to do things around here in America. So.
What was how many like agents and other people were here when that happened?
When it first started, there was maybe 20, but now there's hundreds, and then they got everybody out, so it's kind of crazy right now.
Trump has sent thousands of poorly trained, masked men refusing to identify themselves to drive around American neighborhoods demanding that random people prove their citizenship. And that is a fucking powder keg. A situation like Renee Good was basically inevitable. One of these clips I went over on recent TikTok Tuesday.
One more time and I will put you in handcuffs!
But there's tons of footage of ICE agents losing their cool, provoking people, waving their guns around, attacking people for no reason. Considering that it's recently been revealed that ICE agent training has been shortened to get more boots on the ground quickly, with some people claiming that it's been shortened to 47 days specifically because Trump is the 47th president, expect to see even more unjustified violence in the future. Or maybe they'll just end up recruiting a bunch of out-of-shape fucks who can't even catch one kid who's taunting them to their fucking face. I don't know. The Renee Good story doesn't exist in a vacuum. Before this event, there was the Somalian fraud scandal, which was the excuse that Trump used to flood Minneapolis with ICE in the first place. And after this event, we've seen further protests, more crackdowns, more encounters with ICE. Right now, it really feels like things are moving quickly, and we'll be on to whatever the next big happening is soon enough. But I want to really impress upon you what makes this important, beyond the fact that somebody's dead, and there's civil unrest brewing everywhere, and the government seems hell-bent on pouring gas onto the fire. This is Tricia McLaughlin, the spokeswoman for the Secretary of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem. Despite her claim that her Twitter account is personal, she uses it regularly to post official DHS statements. Less than 2 hours after Renee Good was killed, McLaughlin had this to say. Today, ICE officers in Minneapolis were conducting targeted operations when rioters began blocking ICE officers, and one of these violent rioters weaponized her vehicle, attempting to run over officers in an attempt to kill them, an act of domestic terrorism. An ICE officer, fearing for his life, fired defensive shots. He used his training and saved his own life and that of his fellow officers. The alleged perpetrator was hit and is deceased. The ICE officers who were hurt are expected to make full recoveries. At this point, we can very easily pick out all the inaccuracies and falsehoods in this statement. Renee Good and the other anti-ICE individuals present were not rioting. There's no evidence that Good wanted to kill Ross. There's actually solid evidence that she simply panicked and tried to swerve around him. That doesn't make her totally blameless, but it does mean she's not a fucking terrorist. The shots that Ross fired were clearly not defensive but reactive, as shooting a person driving a car does not guarantee the car stops. And only one officer was hurt, Ross himself. Oh, also, her claim that ICE was doing a targeted operation was debunked by J.D. Vance, who admitted that ICE is going door to door to find illegals, which is a massive fucking overstep of ICE's mandate.
What really was the target of the operation on Wednesday? Of the ICE operation on Wednesday?
Well, first of all, it was a legitimate law enforcement operation. We were going door to door to try to find criminal illegal aliens and deport them from the United States of America, because if you come to our country illegally in violation of our immigration laws, then we have the mandate, and in fact, we have the legal duty to enforce those immigration laws.
So yes, McLaughlin was wrong about a lot of things in her public statement, but you might say it was early in the investigation. Not all the facts were out yet. You can't expect her to be accurate when you don't have all the facts. And yes, that's true, which is why, as a representative of a department of the executive branch, the proper thing to do is to keep your fucking mouth shut until you do have all the facts. But nobody in Trump's administration, from somebody as low as McLaughlin all the way up to Trump himself, actually has this level of professional restraint. They spout provably false nonsense, and Trump supporters say, well, she can say it, right? It's not against the law for her to be wrong. That's true, but it's also not good. It's not responsible. It's not what you expect out of a competently run administration. One day before the Renee Good shooting, Trump's White House published that dogshit J6 page, which I covered in the previous video. It was filled with lies, half-truths, insinuations, and innuendos. It is a propaganda piece meant to rewrite the history of what Trump and his cronies did that day. They feed you these lies and expect you to believe them, and then one day later they blatantly lie again, before all the facts are even out. In a way, that's the final humiliation. They're not even bothering to make the lies good anymore, because they know Trump diehards will always accept them. You need to understand this. If you're not on the Trump train, if you oppose what ICE is currently doing, even if you're ultimately pro-deporting illegals, but you just have a problem with how the government is currently doing it, these lies aren't meant to convince you. You know you're not going to be convinced, and they know you're not going to be convinced. That's not the point. Every time they tell their lies, what they're actually doing is signaling their supporters. They're saying that those who accept the lie, who perpetuate the lie, who perform the lie themselves, should the opportunity arise, will be supported by the administration, and those who dissent, those who ask questions, those who demand the truth, will not be. This government has lost all credibility, not simply because Orange Man bad or TDS or whatever, but because they go out of their way to provoke confrontation with the public every chance they get. Whether that's internationally with tariffs or Venezuela or Greenland, with Congress and Doge, with ICE, whatever it is, every action they take is intended to see how far they can push the line before they receive any resistance. Once they reach that line, they call it the new normal. He's allowed to do it, right? There's no law against this, despite how many norms have been violated in the process. And then they use the pushback they receive as a rationalization to do even more. It's kind of like the old 2010s Tumblr feminists, who said the reaction to feminism proves why we need feminism. Except this time, it's not cringe left-wing internet shit. This time, it's a right-wing cancerous growth, infecting the core of the government of the most powerful and important country on the planet. There is a massive chasm opening up between what is provably true and what the state says is true. More important than property damage, more important than even the loss of life, the loss of objective reality is the most dangerous of all. This is why I have no patience for postmodernists. The leftist type have been a rot for a while now, while the rightist ones are newer, but they both ultimately cause the same corrosion to liberal democracy. And this is also why I go so hard on both January 6th and on Chaz. They are both examples of what happens when an entire population discards the truth for what feels good in the moment, for the propaganda of whichever evil manages to have the loudest voice. And while it's tempting to simply label Trump as the nexus of evil and leave it there, since he is the loudest voice, it's not just him. It's every single collaborator in his government who are willing to debase themselves by repeating his lies. There can be no return to normalcy until each of these people are hauled in front of a court and made to answer for their crimes. The world of liberal norms and gentlemen's agreements cannot be returned to simply with good wishes. The only way out now is through. Also, God bless the liberal Karen wine moms. They have turned out to be one of the most moral creatures in human history. Even after one of their own gets shot, they still show up to mog ICE to their fucking faces. The rightoids are pathologizing this as them secretly wanting to get fucked by ICE agents or whatever, because the reality is far more dire. Trump has lost the support of the rank-and-file middle class, so much so that the regime has to somehow categorize this as a deadly crime. They're scared, and they should be. Midterms are closer than you think, guys.